Hello, this is Todd from TT Bike Fit. Today we are going to talk about a subject that I run into quite a bit during bike fits, and that's pedaling technique. And what I've learned over many years of doing bike fits is that there's one guy out there. You probably meet him on a group ride somewhere. It's the same guy. He's all over the world from what I can tell. And he wants to tell you how you should pedal or how you shouldn't pedal. And what this guy always says is that you should not pedal with your toes down. Don't you dare pedal with your toes down. In fact, you should pedal with a flat foot. And to help you pedal with a flat foot, you should imagine that you are scraping something off the bottom of your shoe at the bottom of the pedal stroke, whether it be mud or something nastier than that. That's what he wants you to do. That will lead you to the promised land of cycling. And since we are talking about the promised land of cycling, let's look at stage 2 of the 2024 Tour de France with two top contenders, Pogacar and Vingegaard, here near the end of the stage. And let's look at their pedaling technique, because I really would dare anybody to challenge whether or not these guys know how to pedal a bike. And I will also tell you that exactly what we're going to observe here with their pedaling technique is what I have observed for many years in all types of elite cyclists again and again and again. This is the way you pedal a bike. So I have news for that guy who keeps popping up on group rides around the world telling you how to pedal. You're completely wrong. You have no idea what you're talking about. You've never looked at an elite cyclist pedaling in slow motion. So let's look at these guys first here. This is about half speed. And I want you to watch their feet. It's going to go back here. It should cycle around in a minute. There we go again. Watch these guys' feet. Okay. Does anybody see a flat foot there? Does anybody see that these guys are not pedaling with toe down? Of course they're pedaling toe down. Let's look at Vingegaard first. Let's start at the top of the pedal stroke. You can see that his foot is nearly vertical coming across the top of the pedal stroke. His foot is nearly vertical. These angle measures aren't going to be perfect because the camera angle is not totally square, but we can see. Okay, now he gets down to the power phase here. Crank arm near horizontal. Ooh, look at that. He's still toe down. Oh no. Vingegaard doesn't know how to pedal a bike. Let's go down to the bottom of the pedal stroke. Same thing. Toe down. This is obviously blasphemy to that guy on the group rides who instructs you all the time, especially if you're starting out, beginner cyclist. You don't have a lot of cycling under your belt, and he wants to be helpful. So he's going to come and tell you, don't point your toes. Well, I wonder if he would ride up behind Vingegaard, or he certainly wouldn't be able to, but I wonder if he would ride up behind him and tell him that he's pedaling his bike wrong. Let's look at Pogacar. Well, we have him right now at the bottom of the pedal stroke. Darn it. He's actually got toe down, and he's at the front of this breakaway group, so he's clearly hammering. Notice both of these guys are on the rivet. They've got saddle tail sticking out behind them. So they've pulled themselves forward. These guys are going for it here, right? They are trying to win this stage. Okay, so let's watch Pogacar. Oh, there's that same thing over the top of the pedal stroke with nearly vertical foot. Now, when he's really pushing, he still doesn't have an entirely flat foot. His heel is still above his toe. Clearly, Pogacar also doesn't know how to pedal. Now, if you haven't caught on yet, of course I'm being sarcastic about that. I mean, nobody can pedal a bike better than these guys right now. And as I said before, every other elite cyclist I've looked at pedals the bike in more or less the same way. The actual angle can change a little bit depending on what they're actually doing, how hard they're going, the degree of mobility they have in their ankle, etc. But the fact of the matter remains is that you will never see these guys, or almost never see them with a flat foot. If you ever see them with a flat foot, it's going to be right in this area here. That's going to be the flattest foot that you're going to see. Bottom of the pedal stroke, never, never, never flat. Remember that, never flat. Heel up. Heel up at the bottom of the pedal stroke. Heel very up as you're coming around the back of the pedal stroke and over the top. Now, the good news is, if you haven't listened to that guy, if you haven't listened to him and you've just been pedaling on your own, you may find that you pedal very close to this. So most of the people I see who have a bizarre pedaling technique, i.e. flat foot at the bottom of the pedal stroke and in other places where they shouldn't have it, have usually been influenced by that guy. And they've been trying to pedal that way rather than letting themselves pedal naturally. So again, stop listening to that guy and get that out of your head. Put this image into your head. Your homework will be to watch additional stages of the Tour de France and watch these guys climbing and pay attention to what their feet are doing. And you'll see that they're doing exactly the same thing, whether they're climbing a mountain, whether they're in a breakaway, what have you. Why is that? Why is it that these guys all more or less pedal the same way and that they don't pedal the way that that guy tells you? They don't pedal with a flat foot. They aren't afraid of, quote unquote, pedaling with pointed toes or pedaling toe down. The reason is, of course, because from a simple mechanical or engineering standpoint, the most efficient application of force at any time is directly at a right angle to the crank arm. Okay, so if we're looking at Poggy here, when we're in the power phase with the crank arm horizontal and down towards 4 and 5 o'clock here, straight down is, of course, the most efficient application of force. That is at a right angle to the crank arm at that stage. Everybody seems to know that, right? That's pretty easy to visualize, right? So there you have it, 90 degrees. Now, what happens as you get down here? Well, that whole thing turns, right? So now the most efficient pedal direction orthogonal to the crank is going to be down and back. So already when you're here at 4 to 5 o'clock, if you were to apply the most efficient force without wasting any energy whatsoever, you would be generating some of your force in a rearward direction. As soon as you get down to the bottom of the pedal stroke here, where of course you will notice you have a high heel in both of these riders, for a very short amount of time, the most efficient force application is straight back. That's for a very short amount of time. Remember that here, any downward force is completely a waste of energy, because any downward force at this point is trying to stretch the crank arm, which of course you can't do. It is certainly not helping the crank arm go around. Right at the bottom of the pedal stroke, directly back, is the most efficient application. But as soon as the crank arm starts coming around, you immediately need to start applying force in an upward direction. That is why these guys have a high heel. Now, you can argue about how much force they're actually applying. You can't tell me here that Poggy or Vingegaard's foot is going along for the ride as it comes around the back. Look at you can visualize the small acceleration as the pedal reaches the bottom of the pedal stroke and comes around. Right through here, there's an acceleration. They are actively moving that pedal. Of course they are. Now, there are studies that have shown that you shouldn't be applying tons of force up the back because it's a relatively inefficient way to apply force. Sure. But if you are well trained in your pedaling technique and have ridden countless miles the right way and haven't listened to that guy once again, you will start to apply force exactly the way these guys are doing it. So as soon as when the crank arm is here already, the direction to apply force is this way. this way. Now, if you've listened to that guy out on the road, he wants you to have your heel flat. He wants your heel to be, let's look back at Vingegaard. He wants your heel to be, your foot to be down here on this line, okay? What happens then when, as the crank arm passes vertical, you need to start applying force in an upward direction, but your foot is flat and it's back here now. And this is where I really spot people who've listened to that guy, who've been influenced by him. Because right when they're in this part of the pedal stroke, their foot, instead of being at a steep angle like we see Poggy's here, their foot will be still almost nearly flat. It'll be like this. So in other words, their heel will be out behind the pedal, way behind here. That is not a position which allows you to generate force in this direction. What you see is that Poggy's foot is along the most efficient line of force. And then you also notice that as he brings the crank arm past horizontal and around the top, that at this point, the line of force starts, the most efficient line of force starts to change to this, right? Remember, it's always at a right angle to the position of the crank arm or at a tangent to the circle of the pedaling stroke. So now the most efficient angle starts to become this, and it changes to this. And what we have going on here with this very high heel, nearly vertical foot, is that there is some amount of driving with the knee forward, which brings this crank arm up around the top of the pedal stroke. And that's why we see, so you can see here on Vingegaard, from this phase to this phase, he's bringing that crank arm. Notice that his foot doesn't change angle very much. He's bringing that crank arm from the 9 o'clock position to the 12 o'clock position by effectively moving his knee toward the handlebars, moving forward. Now, are they thinking about this? Of course not. And this is where people do get into trouble. First of all, they get into big trouble by thinking about it and thinking that they should listen to that guy and try to keep their foot flat and not point their toe. But even if you were trying to emulate the pedal style of these guys, forcing your pedal stroke can definitely lead to unnatural pedal stroke. So it needs to be natural. If you're forcing it, in a lot of cases, it won't come out looking like it looks with these guys. So, my best advice to you here on this is obviously don't listen to that guy who keeps going around on group rides and telling you to pedal with a flat foot. You may want to video yourself pedaling, and if you look distinctly different from these guys, you should ask yourself why. And then you should probably spend a lot of time riding and letting your foot do what it wants to do. Different people will benefit from different types of visualization if they have a unnatural pedal stroke and they're trying to pedal more like these guys do. And one of the things that's worked well for some people is that as that pedal is rounding the bottom of the pedal stroke, the last thing you should be thinking about is pushing, because obviously pushing on the pedal at that point straight down just tries to stretch the crank arm, as I said, does nothing. You should really be focusing on getting the pedal in whatever way you can up and around the back of the pedal stroke. So up and around the back of the pedal stroke. Up and around the back of the pedal stroke. That's what you should be thinking about. Don't even think about pushing down on the pedal in the front of the pedal stroke. Just think about getting that pedal up and around the back, and the rest will take care of itself. That may work for you. Some folks benefit from thinking about driving the knee forward as the pedal comes around. Are you really using a lot of energy to drive that knee forward? No, but this is more of kind of a muscle activation exercise. You don't want to be fighting yourself. You don't want to have your foot or your leg in an inefficient position that is producing forces that are not at a right angle to the crank arm or not at a tangent to the circle that the crank is following. So that's it. That's my pedaling technique rant for today. Stop listening to that guy. I know he's out there all over the place because I hear it again and again, and I can predict when I see someone pedal whether they've spoken with that guy or not. So again, your homework, Watch these guys on more Tour de France stages. Watch them on climbs. Watch them when they're in breakaways. And tell me whether or not their pedaling technique changes. Of course it doesn't. Get that visualization into your head. Ride a lot of miles. Stop listening to the guy, the flat foot guy, and you will be able to pedal more efficiently than you are currently.